two films. I think you will really enjoy seeing them side by side, because even though only 4 years separate The Divorcee from There's Always Tomorrow, they could not be more different in terms of their sensibilities, in terms of their moral framework. This is a perfect illustration of a pre- and post-code film pairing as well. So the film you just saw, kind of morally unimpeachable in every way, right? It just really is clean. And The Divorcee, not so much. So as Todd pointed out, this was based on Ursula Parrott's 1929 best-selling novel Ex-Wife, which is a fascinating, very frank, and often very bleak novel about infidelities that are committed by both a husband and a wife. It's also about alcohol abuse, domestic and sexual violence, and jazz-age Manhattan, filled with the hedonisms of the city, and about working women standing on their own 2 feet, even if women's new freedoms came with certain kinds of mixed blessings. This was the water cooler book of the season in 1929. The novel was reviewed everywhere. Everyone was talking about it, writing op-ed pieces, interviewing Ursula Parrott. The Nation credited Ex-Wife with possessing an intangible quality of truth, describing it as an interesting portrait of a particular type of post-war woman. In the Herald Tribune, Florence Haxton praised Parrott's book for capturing a growing tendency among young women to scrutinize with skeptic eye the freedom which their mothers fought for and stubbornly won with exultation by questioning the value of choosing a job instead of marrying it. So this book is coming out at this interesting moment of transition in terms of women opting for more public lives and careers over just marriages. Although the New York Times called her writing a little bit sloppy at times, the reviewer had to admit the avidity which with the novel was being read. He left his copy of Ex-Wife, quote, idle on the couch for only a few minutes before his wife was flipping over the pages with another wife reading over her shoulder. So this is part of the review of the book. And it's entertaining, but it also gets at really kind of the sexism with which women authored novels that were perceived as written largely for women were approached in the serious media. The New York Times reviewer did have to concede that Parrott had channeled the zeitgeist of contemporary marital relations and contributed what he called a new descriptive tag to the American language, ex-wife. And so Parrott is really credited with not inventing the term, but really popularizing it and identifying a category of woman that had not really been recognized as such before. So Ursula Parrott got her first big paycheck in October 1929, which those of you who know your American history know that this is an unbelievable time to get a big paycheck, right? Literally, as the Depression is hitting the United States, Ursula Parrott is making her first money. And the New York Daily Mirror was serializing Ex-Wife in the newspaper on Black Tuesday. So if you look at the newspaper headline, I have an image of this in my book. The headline is 9 Billions Lost, Morgan Deserts Market. And at the bottom of the page, it says, Ex-Wife is thrown out in storm, because they were in the middle of serializing Ursula Parrott's novel. So MGM snapped up the film rights for Ex-Wife, paying Ursula Parrott $20,000, which is roughly $350,000 today, for the rights to make this movie. And it was quite a challenge to produce. The notoriously picky Greta Garbo refused the lead role. There were rumors that Joan Crawford would take it, but Norma Shearer, who was married to MGM producer Irving Thalberg, really wanted this juicy role. And Thalberg was not convinced that his wife could pull the role off. So Shearer hatched a plan, and she hired a little-known at the time portrait photographer who was just starting to work in Hollywood. His name was George Harrell. Those of you who know your Hollywood photography history know that he became one of the most sought-after glamour photographers of the age. But she hired George Harrell to take pictures of her in a revealing lingerie and left them on her husband's desk. And the film stars Norma Shearer. So the stunt worked. So this is a pre-code film. After 1934, when the production code really was enforced and made more difficult to get around, films got a lot less risque. So it was made at a time, however, of escalating scrutiny of the movies, and there was a pre-production review process that films had to undergo in order to make a film. So at first, MGM was told that Ex-Wife could not be used as a title for a talkie, nor could the theme be employed. And so imagine MGM just plunked down all of this money for like the hot novel, but like you can't use the title. So what did they do? Well, so they classed up the title to the more elegant, maybe, The Divorcee, and reworked the story, and that was enough. They were given permission to proceed with some conditions, including they could not mention the title Ex-Wife in advertising because they said to do so would be shortchanging the public by leading it to believe that the screen version was a faithful adaptation. And in fact, it is not. The ads for the movie never mention that it's based on The Divorcee, based on Ex-Wife explicitly, but they always name Ursula Parrott as the author of the story, and everyone would have known that it was based on Ex-Wife because everyone knew about the novel at the time. And every review of the movie also noted the source, right? The MGM couldn't stop reviewers from saying that it was based on Ex-Wife. So the promotional tag for this film was, "Her sin was no greater than his, but she was a woman." And the movie, in fact, retains the book's central ideas about reckless modern behavior and the pressure for women to live kind of just like men. I will say the ending deviates really significantly from the novel, but that's Hollywood for you, and you'll recognize immediately, even if you don't know what happens in the novel, that the ending it is very Hollywood in nature. Not surprisingly, there are a lot of omissions in the film. There's no trace of many of the worst experiences of the novel's female protagonists, which include domestic abuse, rape, and abortion. This is a novel that is brokering in some really serious issues for its female protagonist. And I think the novel really fills an important gap in our understanding of 1920s literature, and I'm very happy to reiterate that McNally Editions is republishing it next week, so you can actually read the novel for yourself. So The Divorcee was a much-needed smash hit for MGM and for the cash-starved theaters who booked it. It cost $341,000 to make, and it grossed over $1.2 million, and this is depression, right? Film Daily named it one of the 10 best pictures of 1930, and critics described it as an immensely entertaining social problem film that would inspire some very interesting conversations between husbands and wives on their way home from the theater. And after you watch the movie, you can imagine what those were like. Now, almost every reviewer commented on how wonderful Norma Shearer's performance was. Keep in mind, this is still very much the early sound era. Sound only comes into the picture in the late 1920s in Hollywood, and a lot of the advertisements describe it as an all-talking picture. Films of this period still have, tend to have a lot of stilted or theatrical dialogue delivery, and there's something very naturalistic to me about Shearer's performance, although you can occasionally hear voice coaching at work, or perhaps you can't. But overall, Shearer has a really nice, easy way about her and a seriousness to her performance, and I think a lot of that derives from the power of the novel. So although she would be nominated 5 times during her career for Best Actress Academy Award, The Divorcee earned Norma Shearer her only one, and she was up against tough competition, including Greta Garbo, who turned the role down, and Gloria Swanson. The film was also nominated for Best Directing, Best Production, and Best Writing, not for Ursula, but for John Meehan, who adapted the screenplay. But that was also the year of Louis Milestone's All Quiet on the Western Front, which nabbed directing and production. So I would love to hear what you think about these films, and if you read Becoming the Ex-Wife of my book, I'm very easy to find. I'm a film studies professor at NC State. So I hope you enjoy this film and enjoy this reintroduction to Ursula Parrott. Thank you so much.